Chosen one, listen closely. What you're about to hear is not a coincidence, not a video that appeared on your screen by chance. This is a divine interruption. Heaven does not disturb an ordinary moment without reason. And if these words have reached you right now, it is because something you have suspected for a long time, something you were almost afraid to say out loud, is finally being confirmed. The friend who gossiped behind your back, the one who smiled to your face while quietly feeding your business to anyone who would listen, could not hide anymore, not because you exposed them, not because you finally confronted them the way you rehearsed in your head 100 times, because God did. And what happened to them is now being revealed to you, because you were never meant to carry the confusion of a friendship that felt safe on the surface and unsafe underneath it, without understanding why it happened, and without watching the truth finally return to where it belongs. Do not close this message. Do not scroll past it, because what is about to be uncovered will explain the strange looks you started receiving, the private details that somehow reached people who were never supposed to know them, and the quiet exhaustion of loving someone who is never as loyal as they claim to be. This is not about revenge. This is about truth. And the truth, chosen one, has already begun to move. For a long time you told yourself you were imagining it. The way certain people started treating you a little differently, a little more cautiously, as though they knew something you didn't. The way a private conversation you had shared in confidence somehow found its way back to you through someone else's mouth, twisted just enough to be unrecognizable. The way your name kept surfacing in rooms you weren't in, attached to details you never gave anyone permission to share. You made excuses for them because that is what loyal people do. They extend trust even to those who have already stopped deserving it. You told yourself it must have slipped out, must have been misunderstood, must have been someone else entirely. And the cruelest part was never the gossip itself. The cruelest part was continuing to trust someone with your heart, while they were quietly trading pieces of it for attention behind your back. God saw every private moment you shared with them in good faith. Heaven counted every secret you handed over believing it was safe. And none of it, chosen one, none of it went unnoticed. Before we go further into what happened to them, I want you to do something. If you feel in your spirit that this message is for you, comment 777 below. Right now, as a declaration that you receive this word. Like this video so it reaches someone else who has been quietly hurt by a friend who was never as safe as they pretended to be. Subscribe to this channel, because what I am about to share with you next goes even deeper than what you already know, and you do not want to miss what heaven reveals in the days ahead. This is only the beginning of what is being uncovered tonight. To understand how they finally got exposed, we have to go back to where the gossip actually began. It never begins with the betrayal that finally breaks the friendship apart. It begins in small, quiet moments a person makes long before disloyalty fully takes shape. First comes the temptation, a private detail about you surfacing in their mind at exactly the moment they want to feel interesting in a conversation. Then comes the small slip, a hint shared under the disguise of concern, just enough to make someone else lean in and ask for more. Then comes the pattern, the discovery that talking about you gives them a kind of attention and relevance they were not getting anywhere else in their own life. And finally comes the habit, a friendship that on the surface still looks loyal, still shows up for coffee, still texts good morning, while underneath it, your name has quietly become currency they spend to feel important in rooms you are not present in. They did not wake up one day and decide to betray your trust completely. They walked into it one small slip at a time, telling themselves each shared detail was harmless until the details became a pattern. And the pattern became a version of friendship that could no longer be trusted with anything real. What started as a small comment became a habit. What started as a habit became a reputation, quiet at first, growing louder every time someone new discovered they could not keep a confidence. And underneath every laugh you shared with them, every moment you believed was safe, was someone who had already decided your privacy was less important than their own need to feel included in every conversation happening around them. And here's what they did not understand. Every whispered conversation, no matter how carefully it is disguised as concern or curiosity, is still being witnessed by someone who never looks away. They believed that because you never caught them directly, the pattern would stay invisible forever. They believed that because their gossip was subtle, wrapped in phrases like "I probably shouldn't say this," it would never be traced back to its source. And for a season, they were right, because you extended them more trust than the situation ever deserved. That trust was not naivety, chosen one. That trust was the evidence of a heart that believed friendship was supposed to mean loyalty, but heaven was already watching, already recording, already preparing the moment when every whispered word would finally be traced back to the mouth that spoke it. You remember the specific moments, don't you? The acquaintance who mentioned something you had only ever told one person. The strange energy in a room that shifted the second you walked in. As if everyone already knew a version of your story you never told them yourself. The way certain people started treating your struggles like public information instead of private pain. That version of you was not being paranoid. That version of you was not imagining connections that weren't real. That version of you was simply a person whose spirit could feel a betrayal that had not yet been fully confirmed. Heaven saw every one of those uncomfortable moments. Heaven did not look away from what you were sensing, even when you talked yourself out of trusting it. There was a time, before any of this, when the friendship felt completely different. You remember laughing with them without a single thought that your words could end up somewhere else. You remember trusting them with things you had never told anyone, believing that closeness meant safety. Something shifted, not all at once, but slowly, the way trust erodes in small, unnoticed increments long before the full picture becomes visible. You kept showing up the same way you always had, sharing the same way you always had, unaware that somewhere along the way, the friendship had quietly become one-directional, you giving loyalty, them giving your business away in exchange for a little extra attention. That imbalance was never your fault, chosen one, and it was never something you could have fixed by trusting them less carefully, because you had no reason yet to know you needed to. Tell me something. Have you ever felt, deep in your spirit, long before it became obvious, that someone close to you was not being fully honest with how they talked about you when you weren't around? A quiet unease that showed up after certain conversations. A feeling that something didn't add up even though you couldn't prove it yet? That feeling was not bitterness. That was discernment planted in you by God, preparing you to eventually see clearly what your spirit had already sensed for a long time. If you have felt that, comment, "I received this" below, and ask yourself honestly, do you believe God reveals the truth about people before your heart is fully ready to accept it, the same way He is revealing it to you right now? The gossip did not stay hidden forever, because nothing built on disloyalty ever does. It began to crack in small places first. Two different versions of the same story reaching your ears from two different people, contradicting each other in a way that made it obvious the source could not keep their own lies straight. A friend of a friend who finally grew uncomfortable enough to tell you what had been said, no longer willing to protect someone else's dishonesty at the cost of your friendship with them. A moment where they slipped in front of the wrong person, someone who repeated their words back to you word for word, leaving no room left for denial. Gossip is exhausting to maintain, because it requires a person to keep track of who knows what, who was told which version, and who cannot find out the truth. Somewhere in the middle of spreading your business, they began losing something too, though for very different reasons than what you lost. You lost the comfort of believing your friend was safe. They lost the ability to be trusted by anyone who witnessed how easily they handled someone else's private life. It rarely stays contained to just one friendship either. A person who gossips about you usually gossips about everyone eventually, and over time that pattern becomes visible to more than just you. Other people in your circle began noticing the same inconsistencies you had been quietly absorbing for months. A mutual friend mentioned an odd comment made behind someone else's back that sounded uncomfortably familiar. Slowly, the reputation that worked so well in front of each individual person began collapsing the moment those individual people started comparing notes with each other. And a pattern started forming that had nothing to do with anything you said or did. It formed entirely from the pattern they themselves had been building, one whispered conversation at a time, until it became too consistent to explain away as coincidence. If you feel like this video is getting long, I need you to stay with me right here, because the next part is the entire reason this message was sent to you tonight. Everything you have heard so far was only the setup. What comes next is the exposure itself. The exposure arrived, chosen one, not with a dramatic confrontation staged for an audience, but the way heaven usually moves, quietly, precisely, and completely. Picture it for a moment, not to relive the discomfort, but to understand how completely this has already turned. Somewhere, in an ordinary conversation, the story they had been telling for months finally could not hold together anymore. A detail that did not match what someone else had heard. A question that caught them completely off guard. One they could not smooth over with their usual charm. A room full of people who had each individually trusted them with something, now quietly realizing they had all been talked about the exact same way. There was no more room to explain it away, no more distractions left to hide behind, no more time to keep pretending the pattern did not exist. The reputation they built by being everyone's confidant collapsed the moment enough people compared what they had each been told, because truth does not need very long once it finally arrives. It only needs a few honest conversations lining up, and heaven has a way of arranging exactly those conversations at exactly the right time. And here's the part most people never think about. The very thing they were chasing, relevance, attention, a sense of being important in every circle, is the exact thing they lost the moment their pattern became visible. People do not confide in someone once they have watched that person mishandle someone else's trust. Every piece of your business they traded for a moment of attention cost them a piece of their own credibility. One conversation at a time, until there was nothing left for anyone to safely hand them. While you were simply living your life, trusting them the way a real friend deserves to be trusted, they were quietly spending a currency that only ever runs out. And now the very thing they were trying to gain through gossip, being trusted, being seen as close to everyone, has become the exact thing no one is willing to offer them anymore. Stay with me, because this is the part I need you to understand fully before we go any further. And it changes how you see everything that has happened to you. The exposure that reached them was never designed to destroy them out of cruelty. It was designed to break the illusion that disloyalty carries no cost, so that everyone's still living inside that illusion, including anyone who has ever been tempted to trade someone else's trust for a moment of attention, could finally see clearly. An old proverb warns that a person without self-control in their speech is like a city with broken walls, exposed, unprotected, and eventually overrun by the very thing they refuse to guard against. That is exactly what happens to a person who cannot control the urge to talk about others. Their own walls come down eventually, and everything they hid behind them becomes visible to the very people they were trying to impress. This is not cruelty from heaven. This is order. This is the universe insisting that what a person speaks in secret about someone else eventually becomes what others learn to speak about them. If this is resonating with you right now, comment 777 again, because I want to know how many of you are watching this and feeling like heaven just answered a question you have carried for a long time about someone you called a friend. Share this with someone you know who has been quietly hurt by a friendship that was never as loyal as it appeared, because they need to hear that being betrayed by gossip is not a reflection of who they are. It is a reflection of who the other person always was. Now let's talk about what this means for you. Because this message was never only about them, it was about you, and about the freedom waiting for you on the other side of this. For a long time, you may have asked yourself what you did to deserve being talked about by someone you trusted completely. Why weren't you careful enough? Why did you let your guard down around someone who clearly did not deserve that level of access to your life? Chosen one, hear this clearly. Their gossip was never a measurement of your trustworthiness in choosing friends. It was a revelation of their character. A person does not gossip because their friend gave them a reason to. A person gossips because something unresolved in them, some need for relevance, some hunger for attention, refuse to be filled in any healthier way. You did not create that hunger. You were simply close enough to be used to feed it. There is a kind of exposure, chosen one, that does not exist to shame anyone. It exists to protect you from continuing to build closeness with people who were never able to hold your trust safely. The discomfort of discovering this truth was never wasted. It removed you from a friendship where you were constantly, unknowingly, being exposed instead of being protected. Real friendship guards what is shared with it, where that protection cannot exist honestly. Closeness was never actually safe in the first place, even when it looked comfortable on the surface. What felt like loss when this friendship changed was actually heaven making room for people who can hold your trust the way it was always meant to be held. Let me ask you honestly, and answer me in the comments if this is true for you. Do you feel, even now, in the middle of processing this, that you are somehow freer than you were before all of this happened? freer to be selective about who earns access to your real life, freer to share less with people who have not yet proven they deserve more? If that is true for you, type "I am rising" in the comments right now, because I believe declarations carry weight, and I believe heaven honors the words we choose to speak over our own lives. Here is what I need you to understand about forgiveness, because this is where many people get stuck. Releasing bitterness toward a friend who gossiped about you does not mean pretending their disloyalty did not hurt you. It does not mean forcing closeness back into a friendship that has already proven itself unsafe, and it does not mean handing them the same level of access to your life simply to prove you have moved past it. Forgiveness is not for them. It is for you. Holding on to resentment does not punish the person who talked about you. It only keeps you replaying every private moment you ever shared with them, wondering how much of it was ever truly safe. Letting go means choosing peace over the exhausting work of monitoring who knows what about your life. The consequences reaching them now are not something you have to manage or witness up close. Heaven is handling that. Your only assignment now is discernment. And that discernment, chosen one, does not happen overnight, but it does happen. It happens the first time you share something important and instinctively know who has earned the right to hear it. It happens the day you realize your circle has grown smaller but noticeably safer, quieter but far more trustworthy than it used to be. It happens quietly, in the ordinary moments. The friend who never once repeated what you told them in confidence. The conversation you finally have without editing yourself, out of fear it will travel somewhere it shouldn't. Every one of those moments is proof that what was violated in you is being rebuilt into something wiser than before. The version of you that existed before this discovery trusted quickly, sometimes too quickly. The version of you being formed now understands that real friendship is proven slowly, through consistency, not through how entertaining someone is with other people's stories. Healing also means learning to notice and trust the people who have quietly protected you all along without ever needing your business to feel important. Sometimes the pain of one disloyal friendship makes it hard to see the people standing right beside you who never once repeated a word you shared with them, who never once needed your struggles to become their conversation topic. Chosen one, start paying attention to them now. Start pouring your trust into the relationships that were never built on trading your privacy for attention, instead of continuing to mourn the one that was. That shift alone will change the entire atmosphere of your next season, because you will finally be building your life surrounded by people who protect your story instead of quietly performing it for an audience. There will be days that still feel complicated, even after everything I have just told you. And I want you to know in advance that those days do not mean you are moving backward. Some mornings you will feel completely at peace with what happened, and by evening a memory of something they said behind your back will surface and sting a little again. That is not weakness, that is simply what healing from something real actually looks like. Give yourself permission to have both kinds of days, the confident ones and the uncertain ones, without judging either of them. Heaven is not measuring your healing by how quickly you stop thinking about it. Heaven is measuring your healing by whether you keep choosing wiser trust over closed-off isolation. Before we move into the final part of this message, I want to remind you why this matters so much. Somewhere out there, someone else is sitting exactly where you once sat, wondering why certain people started treating them differently, wondering if they are imagining connections that are actually real, still hoping the friend they trusted will finally be honest with them. Comment 777 one more time if you believe that. Share this video with them. Let them know that being talked about by someone who claimed to love them does not mean they were never worth protecting. It means they trusted the wrong protector. There is something else I want you to hear before we close, because this is the part that separates temporary relief from lasting peace. The exposure that reached them was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of a new season for you. One built on discernment instead of blind loyalty. One built on friendships that can hold your privacy instead of quietly trading it away. One built on a relationship with yourself that no longer requires everyone's approval or closeness to feel secure. You are being prepared for something better than what you had, not because friendship itself was worthless, but because what is coming for you was never meant to be shared with people who could not be trusted with it in the first place. Heaven is clearing the room around you right now, even in the middle of any discomfort that remains. Think of it like a garden that has been quietly infested by something that was slowly poisoning the healthiest parts of it without anyone fully noticing. It looks like a loss when that infestation is finally removed. It feels like emptiness in the space that used to feel full and familiar. But underneath the surface, the healthiest parts of that garden, the ones that were being slowly poisoned, finally have room to grow into everything they were always capable of becoming, surrounded now by soil that will not betray them. That is exactly what this season is doing in your life right now. Even on the days it feels like something important was simply taken from you. What feels like emptiness is actually room for something safer to grow. What feels like silence is actually heaven clearing space for real loyalty to finally take root. I want you to speak this over your life with me now, out loud if you can, or quietly in your spirit, if that is where you are today. I release the habit of trusting quickly without discernment. I release the shame I carried for confiding in someone who was never safe to confide in. I release the version of myself that kept believing the best about someone who repeatedly proved they did not deserve that belief. I choose wisdom over blind loyalty. I choose peace over the exhausting work of tracking who knows what about my private life. I choose to trust that heaven sees every whispered conversation and answers every hidden betrayal in its own perfect timing. What was done to me quietly has been brought into the light, and I will not carry shame for a friendship that was never mine to feel guilty about. I am not defined by who talked about me. I am defined by how wisely I choose who gets close to me from here forward. I forgive without reopening access to a trust that was already broken. I release without inviting the same disloyalty back into my life to prove a point. I walk forward in peace. I walk forward in clarity. I walk forward into friendships built on protection, not performance. Nothing hidden will remain hidden. Nothing whispered against me in secret will follow me into my future. My worth was never determined by who chose to gossip about me. My value did not decrease because someone else needed my story to feel relevant. This is my season to heal, to discern, and to become exactly who I was created to be: wise, protected, and free. I will not shrink myself to make disloyal people comfortable ever again. I will not mistake charm for character or closeness for safety. I will guard my private life the way I once guarded a friendship that did not guard me back. I will build a circle rooted in proven loyalty, not easy familiarity. I will not let one betrayal convince me that everyone is untrustworthy, because bitterness lies and tells us the whole world is unsafe when only one person failed to be. I choose to stay open where it is safe to be open, and guarded where I need to be guarded. I choose to believe that what heaven is building for me now is stronger than what was lost. Not a smaller circle, but a truer one, rooted in real loyalty from the very beginning this time. My future does not belong to the people who talked about it behind my back. My future belongs to me and to the God who has been protecting my story the entire time. If you received this message today, comment 7771 final time, so that heaven and everyone watching knows you are standing in agreement with this truth. Like this video, not for me but for the next person who needs to know that being gossiped about is not something to carry shame over. Subscribe to this channel, because there are more messages coming that will speak directly into the season you are walking through right now. Messages that will keep confirming what your spirit already senses is true. Share this with someone who needs to hear tonight that the truth always finds its way into the light, that justice does not require your hands to be fulfilled, and that the people who talked about you behind closed doors do not get the final word over your story. God does. And He has already begun writing the next chapter, the one where you are no longer defined by who exposed your business, but by who you become because you learn to guard your peace and choose your circle wisely. Stay awake, stay open, and stay ready. Because the very betrayal that once made you doubt everyone is about to become the very wisdom that protects you for the rest of your life.